if I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off about the same mistake. Darling, where you going? Won't be as simple for you.
Yo, guys, it is Old Man G here, back again with another sales update. I'm joined by the lovely TomJournalist, so I know we haven't done this for a while. I normally don't do this, but obviously, guys, we only go live with these things when we're getting new info from the GOAT journalist, which is Tom the Journalist, here to bring some new info specifically regarding the info regarding SIR JIM and Ineos. Know there's stuff going around, but certainly the stuff that Tom messaged me, I think is certainly interesting. So I think gives a good insight into what SIR JIM is planning to do regarding his bid, and also if Qatar is going to respond. So shout out to everyone in the chat first and foremost. Hope you guys are doing well. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Studio. We are 4K subscribers. Thank you so much for bringing us to 4K. Shout out to the Red Devil Studio gang. I will be doing a 4K subscriber special. I just can't do that right now because I'm in the middle of exam season, so I'm quite stressed. But I've done my work, so I'm willing to give you guys a good gossip. I hope you guys are doing well. So thanks again for coming on, Tom. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, big up as always, people. And yeah, look, anybody who's in the chat and everything, come on, wish G good with his exams and everything. Good bloke, top man. And anybody who's coming in, like, share, subscribe to the channel and everything, and get him on the road to that 4K. And then we can push on to bigger and better things. 5, 6, 7. Listen, let's get him all the way to 10. So come on, people. Anyway, big up.
Appreciate it, buddy. Shout out in the chat. I see you guys. I see you, Ilya. I think you're there. Manchester versus Newcastle. Let's go. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. I still think the draw is rigged, but I'm happy that it's a home draw. So because of course we're going to get Newcastle. We couldn't get Exeter.
I don't know which way you're saying it's rigged. Are you saying it's rigged because we face Newcastle, or because it's another game at home?
It's both. both.
We don't play away games in the
cup, it's weird. It's like the 12th home game in a row. That's why I'm like, it must be bucks of TV rights or TV monitoring like that, because like I don't know. So but at least it's a home game. If it's the same James's Park, I'd give us no chance. But at least at Old Trafford, I'm like, okay, we might actually have a chance to beat these guys. But yeah, you're right. It's going to be quite an ugly game. And Newcastle, when we went away last time, they just destroyed us, man. They destroyed us. But yeah, shout out to Jarl in the chat as well. Everything Carpy as well. So I see you as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're doing well. Get Mo Water, set the glazers out. And I think a new guy is it Domo Jones wank. So I'll snipe up the class A shares now that's cheap and offset the saving to pay off the glazers. Well, obviously, Tom in the journalist here, we will get to those questions. So let's get into it now, because obviously, we want to get to what you're here for. So I think the first thing, Tom, is can you basically give us, or give the panel people listening, and obviously people will be listening, what has basically changed? Give an insight into what's changed around the SIR JIM Ratcliffe bid, what he's proposing to do. What's the latest update there?
Yeah, well, I think really this comes from, probably the major outlet in Bloomberg really picked up on it in initial talks, and we'd heard it through the channels and the contacts that we've used throughout the US and the sort of financial markets, which have pretty much corroborated everything that Bloomberg said, but they gave us a couple more of the details ever since then. And really to paint a time frame, we're going back almost 2 months ago. I came on here with yourself, and myself and colleagues had uncovered and we'd reported that SIR JIM Ratcliffe and Ineos's bid had effectively synced, and to phrase other sources and what other people were really saying, they said it was dead in the water. That was quote unquote the phrase, really. And this was due to the minority investors via New York Stock Exchange. They almost created this legal blockade against the bid due to him only wanting to buy 50% or 60%, for which he would buy in, but they would make no money from, for which obviously they're not going to be happy about. So in that case, his bids, it would leave the minority investors, which are some of, you know, big hedge funds, private equity firms, in limbo and out of pocket. And really from there, the sort of breakthrough that we've heard of anyway is that the minority investment groups that we've discussed, you know, previously, the three big ones that had really created this massive blockade, Lindsay Train, Aerial Investments, and Eminence Capital, the three big ones that own the percentages of shares in United, they are prepared to do a deal with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. They are prepared to meet him and the Ineos board if it means that their bid goes forward with the Glazer family, and that's what they want to do. But they want to be cutting in on the deal. They want to have some sort of an involvement, either financially from them, Sir Jim Ratcliffe doing a deal with the Glazer family, or they want to retain something with the club, respectively. So, effectively, the way that it would work is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe would meet the minority investors along with Ineos, but he would want the controlling voting rights to take full control of Manchester United, which means the Glazer family wouldn't control the club, and neither would the minority investors. So it would be Ratcliffe would get what he wants, which is he wants control. He doesn't want the 100% of the football club. He wants control. That's what he wants, and he doesn't want the Glazer family to have any majorly voting rights in the football club. So it's him and Ineos that would make the decisions. However, the minority investors, as far as we are aware from discussions that we've had with people in those sort of circles and sectors, is that they would want to keep their stock in the club that they currently own right now, unless they decide to sell their stock and shares off at a later date. But if they are to sell their stock and shares off, Sir Jim Ratcliffe would have first refusal if he wants to buy those shares up. And he could then make up potentially the other 31% of the football club, and then in the long term own 100% of United, because he won't keep the Glazer family in forever. If that's the option that gets chosen out of the bids, it would be a long drawn out buyout over 3-4 years, and then they would eventually leave, and then the minority investment groups will probably want to be bought out at some point in time when the football club's at its best and at its peak price for them to get a good offer and a good deal. So effectively, Sir Jim would get what he would want because he would get control of the club, and the minority investors would get some sort of a deal with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, whether that's, you know, you have to buy us out by X date for X amount, and that's what we want, or we want to retain the stock, and when it comes round to buying, we'll give you the first choice in terms of if you want to buy it off of us as a private individual, and then you could delist us off, and then you could delist the club off of New York Stock Exchange if he wants to. But we'll get into the finer details of the plan and everything. But really, in short and simple, the major update is that should the Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid go through from the improvements that they're looking to make, which we'll get into, the minority investors who created this legal blockade against Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid, they are prepared to speak to him and hear him out, really, as to, well, you've put this bid in which was going to leave us out in the cold. We want to hear what you have to say and what you can offer us, and maybe and potentially we'll change our mind. And if you do a deal with them, why can't you do a deal with us? We're all business people at the end of the day, and we all care about one thing, and that's money. So effectively, hedge funds and private equity firms, if they can manage assets of upwards of $40 billion, I think they can do a transaction of a football club to make sure that they get a good deal for themselves. And look, if it suits everybody, the Glazers, Ratcliffe, and the minority investors, then really you've got that pyramid there. Everybody's happy. Everybody gets something that they want. And really, that would be sort of the plan going forward if that would happen, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, what you said is obviously something that I've not really seen, because I mean, I saw a few updates about this thing and briefly on some of the other bigger United fan channels, but I think the way you've explained it is something that I've not really seen a lot of the reports or channels really talking about it. And I think what you kind of said is important, because I think from what you obviously said before, one of the blockades to Sir Jim being the new owner of Manchester United was the fact that that he was going to run into legal issues with minority with shareholders and minority stakeholders, etc. But the fact that we're in a situation where now he could potentially be working with these guys and cutting them in, etc., and then obviously potentially doing a joint bid to take over the club. It's almost like you could say that if this is the case, and if we go forward ahead, that's almost advantage to Jim in that point, because obviously, as you said, Qatar just want full sell buyout, wholesale, etc. I mean, do you think that? And sorry, I see you guys in the chat. We are going to get to your questions. I just want obviously Tom to just sort of divulge information, and we'll get to your questions in the chat. So if you do have questions, put them in the chat. I'll star them, and I will get to them. So just put a question. But do you? Because one of the things that you said in the message as well, regarding to Jim's sort of bid, was you gave more details regarding what that bid entails for Manchester United Football Club in terms of for the stadium and the debt and all the rest of it as well. Like, can you give like the chat and the panel a bit more information about that, about now that the nature of what Sir Jim's bid looks like it's going to entail?
Yeah, well, when I obviously made the contact with you and a couple of other people and everything, the way that it has really been is that for the last couple of months, none of us have really known, and I think a lot of journalists and reporters will say this, the Ratcliffe bid's very tight and watertight. It's very hard to engage what they wanted to do with this football club. And from some of the details that are starting to emerge from Ineos and from people close to senior figures within Ineos and the sort of sporting side of the business, they have got a little bit of a blueprint and a plan outlining what they want to do should they be successful in buying Manchester United. And the one of the major things that I think a lot of United fans are massively concerned about is that the stadium, the decay, the rottenness of it. There's the roof's leaking. There's urine flooding out the toilets. Like, everybody's seen the pictures, and we've heard the stories from fans that go to the games. Everybody knows what it's like, and really, Ratcliffe looks at the stadium in particular as a major factor, and personally seeking to significantly improve the infrastructure at Manchester United, with it more likely moving towards that Old Trafford would stay on the same land based upon the heritage and the actual history of the football club, where it is, to move it away from Manchester United and where it's actually based with Old Trafford. It would be very uncharacteristic from somebody who probably claims to be a Manchester United fan to move the club away from its history and legacy to a new site just because you can have a new £2 billion stadium. And even if you were to build a new stadium on a new stadium for Manchester United, you could just knock Old Trafford down and rebuild it again on the same plot of land. You still got the history and legacy. You're still going to walk down Sir Matt Busby's way. It's just not going to be the old Old Trafford. That's the only difference. You will just have something new, and which will modernise the whole football club. But the sort of plan that we've uncovered really with Ratcliffe is that he would want to build Old Trafford and keep it on the same land that it is, but he wants to build it up gradually over time, and he wants to add to what the stadium is now year after year and remodernise and restructure the stadium. That's the way that it is, and the best model I can take from this is from really what we heard and how similar it is. Really, it's a very similar take to the model that FSG have done with Liverpool, for example, where they haven't built, they haven't got a £1 billion loan and completely knocked Anfield down and rebuilt Anfield from scratch. They've just built upon the tiers of the stands year after year and increased the capacity and the facilities for the stadium and for the training ground. That's really what FSG have done year after year. They've just reinvested into the stadium infrastructure to keep it up to date and modernise it. The really Ratcliffe plan and the blueprint that we'd heard of anyway is that Ratcliffe had we only heard of this, 2 days ago, was that Ratcliffe had actually discussed a blueprint project, funnily enough, as what was coined and phrased to us 18 months ago. And this was to engage the amount of capital and financing it would need to redevelop Manchester United Stadium. And from the voices and hearings that he got within those sort of discussions, he was very open-minded to it, is from what we've heard. And to phrase this, really, this was before Manchester United was even on the market. And making really Ratcliffe's plans, where he's spoken 2 or 3 years ago, saying that he plans to one day potentially buy Manchester United, it kind of holds some weight when you hear these sort of hear these things coming out now, and rumours that, well, he's already had a blueprint put in front of him to state how much it would take to build a new stadium or to redevelop or to do whatever he wants to do. Anything he says that he would want a project of, you can do it. If tomorrow I said that I wanted to build a house tomorrow, I can go and get an architect. I can go get anybody, project managers, site managers, to build me a house blueprint, and this is how much it's going to cost. That's all that is basically what he has done, but he's done it on a much bigger scale for a football club. So effectively, he's put that phase in place, and really moving on, I guess, to the plans of what they would want to do with the debt. Ineos's sort of senior figures, when they entered the process and before they'd entered it, they discussed how they could manage the debt repayments of Manchester United and the interest payments. And the plan really that they had was to gain a loan investment plan. Now, the way that this would work is this would be from an investment firm, or for example, you could have it from a JP Morgan, a Goldman Sachs, you could have it from Citibank, from whoever you want to do. Credit Suisse, for example, obviously they've gone out of business, but you get the gist of what I mean. And you get a loan investment plan, and what you do is you either get a firm come in with you, or you get another investor that will come in with you, and they will pay off the debt, or however much of the debt, and then they would go into a partnership with you with the football club.
Okay.
Kind of similarly to what Chelsea have done with Clearlake and Todd Bowley. They've merged together. You have a businessman in Todd Bowley, which that could be Sir Jim Ratcliffe in this case, and you have a investment fund like a hedge fund or an investment firm like an Elliott Management, which might provide the financing to take the debt away, but then they will want a repayment on the debt over time. Yeah. But then that gives Ratcliffe the time to then find other financial figures in place where he might be able to recoup his cash over time, or Ineos can, and then they can pay off the debt that way over a long-term failure. So effectively, it removes the debt from United, but it just means that it's their problem and not Manchester United. That's the difference. And I think really that's what a lot of United fans have been concerned about and worried about. What is he going to do with the debt? And I think now that we're actually hearing that he does have a plan for it, it doesn't scare the life out of a lot of people like it did before. True. And effectively, really, sources early on in the process, on behalf of Ineos anyway, had discussed that they were looking at potentially moving closer to 3/4 of the debt. This is another sort of plan that they had in mind, and it might be one of these options that they go for, is they move 3/4 of the debt over to Ineos's books, as we discussed previously that they could potentially do. Move 3/4 of it over, and which obviously would need approval from the powers that be within Ineos. So it wouldn't just be Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He would need to discuss this option with Ineos to make it possible. And then the other quarter of the debt would then be paid off within a year or two through whatever Manchester United's revenue income makes. They would just take a portion of it for, say, 1 or 2 years until the rest of it's paid off. Then thus creating a debt-free modelled football club for Manchester United. So then effectively United could be debt-free within a year or two. So there is that theory and that plan there that he can do that. And really the final point that we uncovered was that as far as we knew about sort of, for example, what Sheikh Jassim had said, where he pledges to invest £800 million or $1 billion, $1 billion into Manchester United straight away. Yeah. And that will go towards everything, infrastructure, team, training facilities, the lot. Ratcliffe, we don't know the concrete amount, but the one thing that we've heard and really uncovered in the last couple of days is that Ratcliffe is said to have some financing in place should they become the owners of Manchester United. Now, we don't know the amount because it is disclosed. The only way that we know the Sheikh Jassim amount is because it's been put out there for fans, for the public to know, this is our plan, this is what we want to do. That's the model that some people were working. Ratcliffe, in this case, he doesn't want to open his mouth and say how much money I have and how much money I'm prepared to put in. Might be smart, might be not. People might say, well, he's being shady. He's not giving the details of how much money he wants to put in. Well, why tell people how much money you've got? When you want to build a new stadium, people are going to charge you more. When you want to buy a football player, they're going to charge you more. When you want to do anything, they're going to charge you more. And if they know that you have £1 billion or however much of investment sat there that you can use to pay these people for whatever you want doing or whatever you want to do, you're just going to get charged more. So it might be a smart theory in saying that this isn't the amount, but I do have something. That's the one thing that I can say for coming here and say Ratcliffe does have financing in place should he become the owner of Manchester United. And the thing that no amount has ever been made public knowledge, but from one thing that we really heard roughly about 3 months ago, but we could never confirm this for anybody. So I will disclose that now. This isn't confirmed or anything, but the murmurs and the rumours was that he was pledging around £1.25 billion into Manchester United. However, this was not confirmed by Ineos, but it also wasn't denied. We didn't get a straight answer. It wasn't a straight yes or no from people that we were speaking to. It was just, well, that's what you've heard. That's not what we're saying. So effectively, it didn't disclose anything. So it was almost an open chapter and you keep the book open. So effectively, he has a plan for the stadium, for people that want to know. He has a plan for the debt, and he also has some financing in place should he take over. That is Sir Jim Ratcliffe's sort of theory and plan. So when we've said before that we don't know what he wants to do, we now know what he wants to do. He does have a plan in mind. So I've just outlined it there for everybody that wants to hear. Stadium's got a plan for, debt's got a plan for, and pledged investment. They've got all three. Whether Manchester United fans like it or not, that's up to them to decide.
Thanks so much, Tom. That really, you've given us a really big breakdown. I think, and this is what I'm saying, I think that this is why, I love interviewing you and you sharing information about, because, I know there's a lot in the community, in the Red Devil community, United community, that are pro Qatar, and fair enough. If I'm to be perfectly honest, like I'm not leaning either way. I'd probably lean more towards Qatar for the simple reason that I believe Qatar will get rid of the debt and the Glazers weren't going to be at the club. That was my main reason for leaning towards Qatar. But I think that now that we're getting a bit more clarity in what Sir Jim is actually going to do and what his bid entails, I think that gives, or that should give, the fan base a bit more clarity, especially in regards to how he's going to manage the debt and what he's going to do via the stadium. Because I think for a lot of people, were assumed that like he would just continue to carry on the debt with the Glazers, but obviously there is as a plan for it. Now, before I ask you one question, I'm just going to quickly just go with just some messages in the chat. Obviously, just address some questions before we go further. Let me have a look what we got here. So Damo Jones says, why isn't the Qatar slapping up the classic shares now? They're cheap enough. Well, okay, we'll save Qatar questions as a Qatar topic then. So I'm going to come back to your question, Damo Jones. Evan Carpi, question, Tom. I think if Ratcliffe does this, I think Qatar will up their bid and get. Okay, right, actually, so yeah, we'll merge the Qatar questions later. So I'm seeing this Sir Jim stuff. Our Glazers, Stephanie, big up Stephanie in the chat. We're doing well. Are Glazers using Sir Jim just to push price up for Qatar? Well, okay, I guess that stems to Glazers and Sir Jim. Do you think that the Glazers are using Sir Jim Ratcliffe just to push up the price for Qatar, Tom?
Personally, I think it's gone beyond that now. If that was what they were wanting to do, well, Qatar haven't changed their offer for 3 months, and nothing has changed. And Ratcliffe has always been there, even though, like I said, that legal blockade has always been there against him. He's still there. It's not as if that they kicked him out or they said, "Oh, you know, we're going with SIR JIM," and they made it public knowledge, and then that made the Qataris react and put in another bid. They haven't done that. They've basically just sat on what they know for 3 months, and they've not engaged. They've not given any of the parties an answer. They've not said yes. They've not said no. They've kept the door open effectively, and they've just played the whole spin. Really, the Glazer family, anyway, because one minute they're not selling the football club, next minute they are going to go with the Qataris based upon that they've given them the most money in the process right now. Then it's that Joel and Avram want to stay, so the only way that they can stay is if they go with SIR JIM. And you're just in a merry-go-round and you're on the circus. But the best thing that I can say for Manchester United fans, and the best way that I can really answer this question for Stephanie, is that it would be very unlikely and it would be very unheard of for the Glazer family not to pick something. And this myth where they just won't sell, I think is false, because they will sell something. They will sell 1% of Manchester United. If they don't sell 1% of Manchester United, they will have wasted their time, their own money by hiring Rain. And also they will have wasted all of these rich, wealthy billionaires and nation states and minority investment groups who have pledged opportunities and financing towards them. They will have wasted so many people's time and money when they've hired law firms, PR firms, and whatever else to run their bid for this process. It's almost like you're running a political campaign. You're running and running and running, but you just don't have a finish line. You've not got a date when you're going to be elected or if you're going to be chosen. That's the way that I can best describe it. So really, if the Glazer family didn't choose to go with Sheikh Jassim for a full sale, or go with SIR JIM Ratcliffe for a partial sale over and buyout over a couple of years, or a minority investment group, I would be shocked and stunned, because you don't come this far, even as them, and how people think that they're absolutely despised and vulgar as owners. I don't think they'd be that naive to come this far and not walk away with no money at all.
Yeah,
they'll want to walk away with some profit in some capacity, whether that's minority investment and financing, or Ratcliffe partnership and then buy out in a couple of years, or do you know what? Let's just leave completely and sell to Sheikh Jassim. They'll leave with something out of this, and it won't be that they'll leave with the last laugh. They'll leave with a couple of bags of cash. That's the way that the Glazer family are going to really look at this. So I think really ultimate, to answer the question, Stephanie, they're going to leave with something. So would it push the Qataris price up? Well, we'll get into about how Qatar are potentially going to respond with SIR JIM Ratcliffe changing the terms of his deal, and really how that's going to factor into the bidding process. But they've not changed for 3 months. So, and the reason why, I'll give the answer why. The reason why they haven't changed their bid for 3 months is they've been in this theory, well, SIR JIM's got a legal blockade against him. It's only us. That's it. You've got nobody else. There's no other bidders at the table. Ratcliffe's in a legal spaghetti jumble that he can't get himself out of, but now he's found a way to, because the minority investments are prepared to do a deal with him. So he's found a way out of that. But whilst he's been trying to do this and maneuver around all of these loopholes and failures and hurdles, Qatar have just sat there on the offer and said, we're not going to give you £6 billion when we're the only people at the table right now. And really, I think they can justify why they've done that, because there is nobody else. Ratcliffe and Qatar are the two main people right now. That's it. So unless you're going to have some mystery bidder come in now to buy Manchester United, Qatar are just going to sit there and think, well, we'll just wait out. We're not exactly in a rush to buy Manchester United. If we want it, we'll wait for it. But if we don't end up getting it, well, unfortunately, we tried our best. We put in a world record offer. You can't please everybody. That's the way that the Qataris would look at it. And if I'm being completely honest, they want a Premier League football club. And if they don't get Manchester United, I think they will go elsewhere. And, you know, that might pay me to say it for Manchester United fans, but FSG have already admitted that they're looking to sell in a couple of years. Spurs, Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis, I think, would take an offer. They've built everything up for now. They can get big money for Tottenham Hotspur. And you've got even other bigger clubs that could potentially become even bigger and do what Newcastle have done. West Ham, for example, could do that. Even somebody like Brighton. Somebody can easily take them on, build a new stadium and turn them into a supergiant club. So You just don't know, unfortunately.
Mm.
But I hope that best answers the question anyway.
Thanks for that, Tom, and obviously Steph says thank you as well. Bath Time says, hope to get you on RDS, not just to confirm my Jasmine theory, but because I want to hear your thoughts on the medical department, etc. Yes, Bath Time, I definitely hope to come on the United agenda sometime. I'm just going for a bit of a difficult patch of exams and stuff, so the next 2 weeks for me, well, just over a week and a bit are gonna be the most stressful, as it were. But soon as I think from the 7th of October onwards, 13th probably actually, it will hopefully be better. Like hopefully. Charlie Marmon says this show is going to be interesting. New question I have: for 3 months now, SIR JIM bid has not moved with 400 billion. Why not give the guys? So yeah, so we'll go to the Qatar thing in a second as well. Is I've learned one thing: SIR JIM's not super guy has done deals that can make you Scottish shares rich for a reason. Never understands exactly. So Julius act on the guys, but have to push because I've up to the price they wanted. Okay, so we're going to talk about Qatar. Big up, Rich. Hope you're doing well. Our Manchester fans in favour of SIR JIM now. Well, if you go by my comment section, probably not. Probably not, Rich. But for those who are watching, make sure you head over to Rich Sports' channel and subscribe to his channel. He does a lot of really good content. So go and support my brother Rich over there. Let's see if there's any about. Yeah, okay, we'll go to because we're talking about that. Also, shout out to Now. I'm not sorry for ages where you've been hiding. I've just been busy now. Hope you're doing well. And how way the lads says Jordi. I assume that's a guy with the Carabao Cup result. But yeah, big up to Newcastle, man. Played well, beat City. No quadruple for City at least. So that's at least one thing that's over. So if we can stop them from winning back-to-back trebles, that'll be nice as well. So we'll see what happens there. So obviously, a lot of the questions that were in were regarding Qatar and Qatar's response. And obviously, if you read the chat, there's a lot of Qatar. What's going on about Qatar? So what would you say has been or is potentially the response to Qatar to these new developments, Tom?
Well, really, the way that it's looking anyway, especially anyway with Ratcliffe, is that he's probably, if I'm being completely honest, this isn't a factual thing, but if I'm being honest with the way that a lot of businessmen work, they sometimes just land on cash. I know that sounds a bit weird to say. They just get an influx of cash coming at a certain point or a certain time within the financial year, which then gives them that added boost. So Ratcliffe, in this case, if I'm being honest with you, the way I think it is he's either found money out from somewhere, from an investment group, or he's managed to stretch the bonds and loans a little bit more so he can get some more cash in, or he's just made some money through Ineos or something, and they've effectively just put more money onto their offers and push the offers up for the prices closer to what the Glazer family want. Whether they'll meet the £6 billion or not, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think they will. No, I think they'll put the offers up and they might stretch it over a certain mark, but I don't think it'll meet what the Glazer family want, especially not in the short term anyway, because Ratcliffe can't pay £6 billion right now. He can't get the loans above $4 billion. And as far as I'm aware, he's only got a couple of billion. He only had a couple of £1 billion to play with when he tried to buy Chelsea Football Club, almost 18 months before Manchester United was on the market. So he didn't necessarily have all the money in place to buy the football club 18 months ago, if he was to have done that. And 18 months on now, I don't really think a lot will have changed unless, like I say, he's landed on some money from somewhere. So the response from Qatar, really, it comes down to two ways that they want to look at it. They're either going to sit and wait, and that's one of the things that we were told that Qatar will do in this process. They will wait, but they will only wait until they feel like enough's enough. And then it's either, right, we're either going to make one final push, which has never been ruled out, that they will bid again for a final time, and that is it. There is nothing else. So now, you take the money, or we'll pull the offer off the table. Whereas what they did before was they made the offer, the fifth offer, but they just left it sat there. They didn't say, you take it by Friday, and if you don't take the offer by Friday, we're pulling the plug on it and we're walking away. And they didn't say that. They just said, look, we're putting the offer in. You've got till Friday to respond, otherwise we're not going to engage with you. And it was almost miscommunicated in how that was actually being perceived in the media. So effectively, the response from Qatar to this will be that, well, we've got leaks and we've got voices within the SIR JIM camp. And I'd be very shocked if SIR JIM doesn't have the same sort of thing, where they're almost, you almost have it where you have, the person in the next room, glass against the window sort of thing, or a glass against the wall, and you engage and you hear what the other party's doing or what the other party's saying. I'd be very shocked if Ratcliffe and the Qataris aren't trying to figure out, or if they have figured out, what each other have bidded in this process. I'd be shocked if they haven't, really, based upon how long this has been going on. And you have to strategize to win. And unfortunately, that people will say it for what it is. You have to use dirty tactics if you want to win. And if you know what your rival's bidding, well, that's brilliant for you, especially when the Glazer family want to keep everything really quiet and you can't discuss numbers publicly because of NDA agreements anyway. But if you hear it and it's going to be an advantage to you for what the other person's bidding. So really and effectively right now, I don't think the Qataris are really going to respond massively like people have. I know we've seen comments in the chat already that, people are thinking that Qatar might come in and just blow SIR JIM out of the water. Look, if SIR JIM puts in a major amount of money onto his offers, which hits the £6 billion asking price that the Glazer family want, or goes close enough to it that the Glazer family might start talking to SIR JIM, and which they haven't talked to any of the parties ever since those third bids. If there's a movement more towards SIR JIM, it might make the Qataris react to think, right now we need to go all in, if we're ever going to go all in. So really and ultimately, I think what the Qataris will do is they're going to leave it potentially a week or so, see what SIR JIM Ratcliffe has actually done to the bids and what he's actually proposing, and potentially they might hear from the minority investors, because the minority investors, don't forget, guys, anyway, is that they're happy with the Sheikh Jassim bid, because it means that the Glazer family will leave, but also they will leave. They will get bought out. So it's a win-win for if Sheikh Jassim's chosen, and they're just basically covering their ass if it does go to SIR JIM, that they end up getting some money from the deal. That's the way that they want it. So effectively, the Qataris, I personally believe anyway, is that they're just going to sit on whatever SIR JIM Ratcliffe is going to propose and do in terms of money. And like I said, I don't know numbers and everything because of NDA agreements. We ask questions as journalists and reporters and everything. We ask the questions, what sort of numbers are they talking, and what sort of figures is Ratcliffe prepared to move, and where is he getting this money from all of a sudden to potentially improve the bid or restructure, and nobody's going to ever tell you a number, unfortunately, guys. That's the only disappointment that I can give you because of NDA agreements. But the one thing that we can say with the Qataris anyway is they still strongly believe in that fifth bid that they made. And that's the one thing that I've always heard. We believe in the bid because they believe that bid's the biggest bid in the group and on the table. And they also believe that should Manchester United be bought out by them, they would be successful with the football club. And they believe that they're the best sort of option for Manchester United. And I think really from what you said earlier, G, with the fan engagement in the comments, that's what a lot of people want anyway. They want the Qataris to come into Manchester United with the money and steamroll it. But
sorry, this is a question from Dees. Just I think as what you said, it says, can Qatar buy the minority shares to block Jim Ratcliffe? Says Dees.
Well, if they were to buy the minority shares, for example, if they bought the shares that the minority investors hold, they would only own 31% of the football club. So effectively, they would be the side chick of the Glazer family. That's what it would be. The Glazer family own 69% right now, and Qatar would just own the other 31%. And they can't really do anything about it. So effectively, they would just buy up shares for which that they're already wanting to buy anyway. So in terms of would it block SIR JIM? Not really, because SIR JIM could still do a deal with the Glazer family and own 60%. And then because the Qataris are the people that he's going against, well, if they own the other 31%, I'm not going to give a rat's ass about them, because I'm going to have control. They're just going to be minority stakeholders. They're just going to have shares in Manchester United. So they ain't going to influence anything of this football club. So in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's case, he wins. He's got control of the club. He's got what he wants. The Qataris will look at it and think, well, we've bought minority shares of a football club, which we have no say and control over. That's not what they aimed to do in this process. They wanted to buy the whole football club. So they will look at it and say, well, we failed. And they wouldn't buy 31% of the football club if they weren't going to have control of it. But that's the one thing that Qataris have never used. They've never used the word control. They've always used full buyout, full sale, full control. We don't want to have any other person sitting there next to us. No, we want to have control of this football club. We want it as a private organisational company. Take it off as a PLC. Take it off a New York Stock Exchange. Debt-free, new stadium, football team, all the different teams, men's, women's, youth, and training facilities, and go forward and have a future. That's what Sheikh Jassim's proposal is. So effectively, really, would it block Sir Jim Ratcliffe? No, because it wouldn't do anything to harm Sir Jim Ratcliffe, nor would it do anything to hinder him. So effectively, there'd be no point in doing that anyway, as I've just outlined there anyway.
I'm on mute, so I've been speaking, but I'm on mute. Fair enough. I'm just getting some more questions. Let's have a look. Donald Jones says, but owning the 31% cheaper now to allow Qatar to increase offer on the 69, still buying out less than 6 billion. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand what Dave was saying here, where you could buy the 31%, which is obviously going to be cheaper now, and also it would be cheaper than buying 69%, as I think a lot of people will know that anyway, without needing a maths degree. But the way that the Qataris, if they buy the 31%, they've got 31% of Manchester United, but they have no control over it. But yeah, they can buy it. It might be cheaper now than what it has ever been before or whatever. But then if they don't strike a deal with the Glazer family, they've got 31% of Manchester United, for which they're not going to have any voting rights on. They're not going to have any control of. They just don't. What? It's just going to be what on Qatar's, national stage. When they host the World Cup, we own 31% of Manchester United, but they can do nothing with the football club. It's effectively going to be maybe what, say, QSI have done, where, well, you have a Qatari businessman who buys Malaga Football Club in Spain, and we own a minority stake of that football club. They would just be a minority stakeholder of Manchester United, in the same way that loads of different teams and football clubs, they own percentages in other teams. For example, PSG were looking at owning, I think it was attaining a 15 or 10% stake in Sporting Lisbon. They already have a stake in Braga in Portugal, for example, but they were looking at getting in with Lisbon before they ended up going and settling for Braga. So it would effectively be that, but they would just have 31% of United, which means nothing to them. They don't want that. So in terms of owning 31% now, and it would be cheaper to buy out less than 6 billion, well, the best way that I can put it for Damo anyway is that for 69%, the Glazer family want £6 billion. That's short and simple. And the rest of it will have to figure itself out with the Glazer family and with the New York Stock Exchange.
2 seconds, Tom. Just keep speaking. Sorry.
Yeah. It would have to just go through the whole process. So effectively what you would have is situations where either the Glazer family, and this is what I mean by the NDA agreement, where we don't know the actual finer details of how the Glazer family's metrics work, where in the price, does that mean the minority stakeholders are bought out if it goes to Sheikh Jassim, and that they get bought out within the £6 billion, or does that mean that so for example, Sheikh Jassim buys he wants 100%, but he can only buy the 69% now, for which would probably be the better theory. He would have 69%, and then he would pick away at the minority investors bit by bit. Or they all just leave in one unison, where the Glazer family leave and the minority investments follow suit with them. But again, because we don't know the numbers and the actual figures of the deal, we can't then actually put an accurate figure and timescale on when everybody would leave should Qatar come in and take over Manchester United. So effectively, because of the NDA agreement, it's not a clear and obvious answer as to what Qatar would do. But they wouldn't want to own 31% of something if they weren't confident that they were going to get the other 69% of it, which would then round up to the 100% that they originally wanted. Whereas you can just put in a bid now and say, look, we want to buy 100% of the football club. This is the bid, which I think for a lot of people anyway is probably a lot more of a simple answer than say, oh, we'll just buy 31% now and then we'll bid for the other 69. There's no point. Just bid for the whole 100%. It causes a less headache for you. And also, should you fail to get the football club, you're not stuck with 31% stocks in Man United that you might not want, which then would prohibit them to then go and buy a West Ham, to go and buy a Spurs, to go and buy a Liverpool, because they own a large minority stake, over 20%, in another football club, which would be no use to them at all. So effectively, it would just be an investment, but they're not putting any money into Manchester United. That's the difference. So they are literally the silent partner and minority stakeholder that the Glazer family would be in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposal.
Fair enough, Tom. Thank you. Thanks very much. Just seeing if there's any more questions, comments, but really appreciate you updating anyone. I think Stephen, is there any way that the Glazers are forced to give a deadline date for selling United? Probably not,
no,
right?
There isn't any forced deadline upon them. And again, reason being, you had the situation with Roman Abramovich. You know, the war in Ukraine happened with Russia and Ukraine, and you know, Russian oligarchs within Europe, they were, you know, being exiled out of Europe completely, and their assets were being frozen, and whatever their assets were valued at and where their money goes, they cut off the money streams to those businesses. So effectively, no money was going to the oligarchs to then go back to the Russian state, and it was a massive blowout of proportion. And Abramovich was forced to sell Chelsea Football Club for the better good of the football club, because if he didn't sell it, they were going to run out of business. And some people might say, but some people in that position, they would be stubborn and they would just do that. They would, you know, there's some people that we know in the football world that they will hold on to their businesses until the last steps of it. And who knows, when the Ukraine war's over and everything, he could still then re-emerge and rebuild Chelsea from nothing to something. But again, we don't know how long the war in Ukraine would have taken. And like I say, it's still going on now today and there's no resolve. So for the Glazer family anyway, there is no forced deadline. They're not being sanctioned by anybody. They're law by, as many people say, unfortunately, as many people might not agree with me in sense, they are law-abiding businessmen. They don't do anything dodgy or shady. They have everything in line and in place. And these people in today's society wouldn't own a football club. No, not with the way that they bought it anyway. They wouldn't be owners of a football club right now today. No, you would be owned by somebody completely different who bought the football club in the right metrics and channels, because the way that they bought this football club in a leverage buyout is illegal to do so. It's
legal now, yeah.
You can face prison time for even proposing a leverage buyout in the against the Premier League football club.
Yeah. And
that's just proposing it. These guys have actually been here and done it. And unfortunately, there's many people, if you want to put your blame towards anybody, not irrespective of the Glazers family, put it towards the Premier League.
Premier League, exactly.
Put it towards the Premier League, put it towards the FA, put it towards all these different English governing bodies, because these people allowed this to happen to your football club. And you know the funny thing, G? There was I can't remember if it was a Thai businessman or it was a Chinese businessman. Anyway, it was an Asian businessman. He tried to buy in, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Fulham or it was Southampton. Anyway, he tried to buy in at one of these, one of the football clubs, and he proposed a leverage buyout. Now, this was before the actual metrics had come in place that prohibited leverage buyouts to be used in football. And the way that they'd structured the bid was legal, but the Premier League didn't like the actual way that the football club was going to be taken over and how the debt would actually strangle that football club should they buy it, because revenues at such as Southampton and Fulham are not Manchester United revenue level. They are on the peripheral of Championship or staying in the Premier League. And that would really, if I'm being honest with you, if it goes the wrong way like it has done, say, for Manchester United, if the Glazer family did what they've done at Man United at a club at Southampton, Southampton would be extinct right now. They wouldn't be a football club. They wouldn't be an establishment.
Of course.
And it's not just because of the scale of it. It's because Southampton don't have the revenues United make. That's the difference. And even if you did it on a lower scale, so effectively, the Glazer family have crippled Manchester United, and the way that the Premier League looked at that businessman's offer was, you will exile a football club. You will make them a Bury football club. You will make them a Bolton football club where they're in administration or they go out of business. And when you think about it at the time, Fulham and Southampton, I can't remember which club it was anyway, were both established Premier League football clubs. So they had to legally protect against those clubs and for those clubs. So what did they do, G? They rejected the proposal and they said no takeover is going to take place based upon we don't suffice what you've put, and we don't think that the metrics you've put in place will legally and safely and sustainably keep that football club running for 10 years, for which the Premier League legally state you have to do. And they couldn't guarantee that. So what did they do? They blocked the takeover. Whereas 20 years ago, the Glazer family were allowed to come in here, steamroll, £700 million worth of gross debt at Manchester United. See you later. They still own the football club 20 years later, nearly.
Yeah.
And nobody need talk about it.
It's sickening. It's sickening, and that's why when people talk about the Premier League and all these different things stuff like that, like I just laugh. I really just laugh, to be honest, because you're right. Corrupt, the lot of them. Let me quickly get some questions here. So that was, I think, from Steven's question. So Gadget thinks, if Qatar buy out the minority shares, then don't they become a legal blockade when Radcliffe tries to do a deal? Whereas I think you actually addressed this question so just early on. So just Gadget saying, if you just want, I think rewind back about 15 minutes or so, and you get the answer there. So big up Jarvis, man. Jarvis Tom, how realistically is Ineos plans to clear the debt? How will the investor partnership work?
In terms of the Ineos plan to clear the debt, as we said before, there was sort of two proposals that had been discussed with Ineos, and the first proposal was that they would either get a investment firm or a private equity firm or an investment firm anyway. They would get a loan to cover the debt, and that would move the debt from United to Ineos. So it's an Ineos repayment of the debt, that it's one of their assets, Manchester United, that they're making the interest repayment on. But when it comes to that investment firm knocking on the door and saying, hey, we want some money back and we've got a 7% interest rate on, I don't know, let's say £1 billion debt to cover the whole loan and to cover the whole debt for United. United would be a debt-free football club. However, the debt would be on Ineos, which would obviously strangulate that business rather than what it has done for Manchester United, which I think really would be a joy for a lot of United fans, is that you would still have that debt-free football club, but that isn't, and that hasn't been set in stone, as I must say, but this is what has been discussed, and this is really what we've uncovered. And like I said about it, was really coming up to it where they were talking about potentially, if you had an investor come in, so similar to what, like I was discussing before with Todd Bowley and Clearlake, where you have a businessman, you have hedge fund, private equity firm, whatever, partner together, they buy the football club. It's almost as if the private equity firm buys the football club, the businessman runs it for them. That's it, effectively. And they have a stake in the club. But the overall financing and money comes from the hedge fund or the private equity firm. But if they're not going to make money out of it in the long term, there's no good thing or reason why you should partner with a hedge fund or a partner with a private equity firm, because if they're not going to make money, they're not going to partner with you. It's as simple as that. So with the way that Chelsea worked with Todd Bowley and Clearlake, there will be an agreement that at some point Clearlake has to make that money back that they've invested into Chelsea. Whatever way that they're going to do it, we don't know. They'll either sell the football club in 10 years' time when it's a lot better. They'll either do what maybe the Glazers family have done, take dividends out of the football club year after year till they make their money back or whatever. We just don't know. And the second hypothesis and theory with Ineos had been that move 3/4 of the debt over to Ineos, but that would need approval from all the senior figures within Ineos, which could take some time if somebody's not convinced by it or doesn't think it's a good move for them as a petrochemical business. Rather than as a football club. They are a business that's based in petrochemicals, not in football. That's their first business. So effectively, you have to get non-football people to agree on something football-centric. which might take a little bit of time and it might be hard to do. So the way that would work is you would have 3/4 of the debt go onto Ineos and be cleared off, paid off, done whatever with, and then make the other quarter of the debt be paid off within a year or two through what Manchester United make and generate with the revenues, which that could be 600 million, 700 million. And within a year, like I say, that could be the final quarter of the debt, which might be 200, 300 million. You just take out of the 700 million that you make as a club, 300 million pounds of it goes on the debt repayment. Right. You've still made 400 million pounds for that year as a football club, but we are debt free now. That's the only difference. So effectively, it's a fresh start, but it would take a year. That's how that proposal would work. So effectively, that's how both of the plans with the debt would work. And with an investor partnership, if the investor or the investment firm are not going to make money, you're not going to have a partnership. So if Ratcliffe's sort of way of thinking is that he's going to, in the long term, either in the process, he's going to partner with somebody while he still can now with an Elliott or a I don't know, an Oak Tree Capital or somebody like that. He partners with a minority investment group and buys Manchester United, or he either buys the football club now with his own money, and then at a later date, he's open to bringing in a partner or an investment firm to then give them a stake of the club for however much money. But he also has a partner that will put money into the team or into the club. So there's a lot of ways that he can work it. But until he has control of the football club, he's not really going to be thinking that far ahead, really.
Sorry, just Giles adds says that's why I was asking how realistically is their debt. So, as in, do you mean debt sort of plan? For me, it sounds difficult, and I suspect the debt to remain. And I think that's kind of what is implying is that, like, the way you're almost describing it, Tom, it sounds like obviously these guys obviously more experienced in finance than we are. So I'm not saying that we know them so, but it almost sounds like to a layman that United is still going to have the debt. It's just that it's going to be packaged in a way that is somewhat different to it is now. Would that be fair?
Probably fair in saying that, but the one thing that a lot of people have been sat there and worried about is that what if they come in and they don't do anything? They just don't do anything at all. What if they're not even thinking about that right now? What if this is just, as many people have alluded to it anyway with SIR JIM Ratcliffe, is just Glazer 2.0? What if that is what this is? He looks at United in the same way that they do. It's a cash cow. The only difference is we pump a bit of money in for maybe 2-3 years, and then suddenly we stop, and then we just make our money back. And then after we've made our money back, anything we do after that point, well, we're making a profit on. And United's the biggest brand in football and potentially even in sports. So you're going to have a lot of money to make if you can do it, really. But you're going to have to put a lot of money in the short term to make it back in the long term. And at the end of the day, it's not a nice thing really to talk about anyway with people and health and age and stuff. But Ratcliffe's no spring chicken. He's 70 years old. He's an established, travelled, well-educated businessman. And age isn't on his side at this moment in time. So you could see this from two perspectives. It's either a business venture, and it might set up his generations of kids and family for years and years to come, or it's just going to be a situation where he might look at this as a pleasure project. I am a Manchester United fan. I was in that 99 final. And you know what? When I saw Manchester City lift the Champions League, the FA Cup and the Premier League, as a Manchester United fan, my heart sunk. But I want Manchester United to do that again. I want United to do that even better and win the quadruple. That's my ambition for United. But with the debt and the sort of money in place, I think it's putting a lot of people at nerves and really putting them at ease that they are actually discussing it. That's the one thing that a lot of people were worried about. Are they even thinking about this? Because they've not said anything. But why tell somebody a plan if you don't get the football club? What was the point in doing all that planning for them? There wasn't really any point. Whereas if you can hypothesis and you can strategize, and then when you get the football club, right, then we can take it more seriously and actually put it into practice. But the way that an ownership group would work anyway, G, is that, and Jarvis anyway in the comments, is that when they come in, they all normally have a 100-day feeler period. They see how the football club runs, who runs what, who does what, and see what needs to change and what needs to happen. And after that 100-day period, that's where then you see the plans of what they actually are going to do with the football club. That's when everything that they said will happen. So effectively, when people say with the Sheikh Jassim bid that, oh, he's going to come in, he's going to build a new stadium and this, that, the other, he might not build a new stadium for 2 years. That's the difference. Ratcliffe might not. The way these people work, they could either build a stadium the day that they get the football club and start getting the diggers out, or they could wait until they feel like they've self-sustainably got United to a point where that when they build the new stadium, it's not necessarily them that's paying for the stadium. The club's revenues that they generate pay it off within 5 years or something like that. And that's the difference between Manchester United, for example, and Tottenham. Tottenham have got a loan debt repayment which lasts over 22 years. And after those 22 years, because of the amount of money that stadium will generate because of how modern it is, by that point, they'll have made money. They won't have just broken even after 22 years. They'll have made money after that 22 years. And what's the best thing that you can do? You lose money, but you make more money than you're losing. So effectively, you're making profits, even though it's going to hit your bank balance in the short term, but in the long term, it will better be for your football club. And that's really the way that it would work for the bidders, for Ineos anyway, is that they'll have a plan for the debt, but they're not going to put anything in place or practice until that actually happens. In the same way with Sheikh Jassim, and I think it's fair to point, really, let's be, level-headed and balanced here. Yeah. He said that he'll clear the debt, but he might not clear it straight away. He's not actually said, oh, as soon as I take office in the first day in power, right, I'm wiping the debt off. It'll take time. In the same way that if he's to buy 100% of United, well, he can only buy 69% because that's what the Glazer family own. And because we don't know the terms of the deals and everything because of NDA, we don't know if the other 31% of the minority investors will go with the Glazer family straight away, or if he's going to have to pick at every single one of them and buy them all out individually, which will take months. In which, from my sort of background that I've heard anyway, with how sort of the stock exchange and the stock market works, I'm not an expert or a guru, but if I'm being honest, I'm quite amateurish in the whole thing. But the way that I've sort of educated myself on it is that it would be the latter, and that he would have to pick at each one of them bit by bit until he reaches the 100%, which will take months, though. That's the only difference.
Thanks again for that, Tom. I really appreciate it. As we begin to round up, because sorry guys, we give you a lot longer show, but like I said, I've got to go to bed. I've got an exam coming up soon. So, but I hope you guys have enjoyed the show and you enjoyed and you've found the sales update useful. If you have any questions left for Tom, get those in. We'll take final questions for the last 5 minutes. I'm just going to quickly just check to see what absolute mess the takeover is. I mean, that summarizes everything. Sadiq says, yeah, we need to rebuild or trap infrastructure, pay off football debts, etc. I wish. So let me just quickly just see if there's any other questions here. Everything Carpi. So I think this is everything Carpi again. Cosmo, with the restructure of Ratcliffe bid, do you still think Qatar will win, as it would totally ruin their image? I think I'll leave the will Qatar win as the final question. So you got the pleasure of the final question. If anyone has any other questions for Tom, then let me know. Is there here we go. Here's a question from Des. Why do Glazers think United will be worth 10 billion in the future? I don't know. I think that was spurious, though. I don't know whether there was any truth in that statement. I think the Sun or the Daily Mail spewing out stuff. I do think that they believe that they're going to get more money than they should. I think they're disappointed that they haven't got more bidders. But personally, for me, like I've said, I think that's their fault, because I think they set a high asking price, and I think had they set a lower asking price, then they would have potentially got more bidders. They could have stoked the bidding war, and that would have potentially got them the price they wanted. And I think that they set a higher bidding price, and therefore they put off a lot of potential investors. Because I mean, I'm not an expert, but the way I kind of see it is that if you want to get the most people involved, you know, it's much like the Harry Kane transfer. Daniel Levy wasn't going to sell Harry Kane, in my opinion, for less than 100 million or whatever, or 120, whatever. Sorry, actually, no, better examples of Caicedo one. You know, Brighton were able to create a bidding war between Liverpool and Chelsea, and therefore they were able to get, even though no one was offering more than 80 million for Caicedo, they ended up getting 150 million for him, and obviously they got their money. So what, 45, million pounds more. The way I see it is that if the Glazers set a low asking price at 4.5 billion, maybe 5 billion, but somewhere around those lines, they would have got more bidders. They could have created a bidding war between SIR JIM RATCLIFFE, Qatar, and other minority bidders, and then by almost implying that they were in the bidding process, they could have a scenario where they could have ended up getting probably close to 6 billion anyway. They didn't do that. They put people off, and they have themselves to blame. Shoap says, isn't SIR Jim's offer to buy United too complicated to actually work? We kind of discussed it in the show that I think there's a bit more clarity with it, Showcat, especially regarding what the bid entails. I don't see any other specific questions, so you know what? We'll round up with Evan Carpy's question. With the restructured Ratcliffe bid, do you still think Qatar will win? And as it will totally win the image? Essential saying is like, what are Qatar's chances? Are Qatar still favourites, or are they not favourites? What do you think about this, Tom?
Well, as we sit here and discuss this right now, nothing has changed. So really, you have to say that the Qataris are still favourites to buy the football club, based upon that they've offered the most money. And as I've always phrased it, they offered a premium offer, and it was a premium offer based upon that it was massively above what the share price indicated and really stated what Manchester United was worth at the time that they made that third bid. So the way that they would look at it is that they've reached a point where they say what the fair value of United is, and then they've just overinflated what their valuation is. And effectively, they feel like they've overinflated it to the point where the Glazer family should take the offer. And the best way to say, will Ratcliffe's bid and will the restructuring, do anything? Well, because we don't know the actual numbers of what he's actually putting in or putting onto these offers, we can't accurately say. So, for example, I could sit here now and say, Ratcliffe's going to put another £1 billion on the offer and he's going to meet £6 billion. If it works out, I'm a genius. But if it doesn't, well, nobody's ever going to trust a word that I say ever again. But the way that I've always phrased it, and that's the one thing I've never done when I've come on here, and I've never set deadlines and I've never set numbers. And the reason why I've set that is because I don't know the dates and I don't know the numbers. And anybody who tells you the dates or the numbers, it's going to be this Friday, it's going to be this Sunday. I've spoken to Jim's mate. Jim's mate's told me that it's going to be on £6 billion. I've spoken to Avram's son, and he's telling me it's worth 10 billion, and that's what his father wants. His farmer's dreaming of buying, a yacht. They want to buy their own private island, Blazer Island. They want to build it for £6 billion when they buy the football club. I could come up with all these different taglines and theories, but none of them are going to be taken seriously or factual because it's not the truth. And the best way to describe it with the Qataris is, if I'm being completely honest, this hasn't been designated and told to me, but the sort of influential figures that I've been told that are around this Qatar bid, they're not going to accept a loss in the face that they haven't gave it their all. And the way that they have looked at it is they believe the Glazer family will sell, but they will sell for a right price. And they believe that a right price is what they've offered. So effectively, it's almost at a stalemate, and it's a bit of gamesmanship between the Glazer family and the Qataris, because they both have a valuation that they believe is right, but they're not prepared, either of them, to buckle and meet in the middle or to negotiate down. or to negotiate up in this case. So you're almost at the OK corral, and it's almost like who's got enough bullets left to fire at each other. That's how it is. So effectively, that I can say with the Qataris is that the bid still stands. And the one thing that I always leave with the Qataris anyway is that they don't like to lose. And the way that I've been sort of theoretically centric around this, and I've said this before, is that if people cannot see that this Sheikh Jassim sort of bid is a state-backed bid, I don't really know what people need to understand about it. There is influential pressure from Qatari royals or Qatari state in this bid. Because you look at it from this perspective. If they win, it will come out that, the Emir was behind it all, or Nasser al-Khalifi, he was the man that was bidding for it, and they was just using Sheikh Jassim's name. And you'll hear all these different stories that the media will portray that it was a state-backed bid all along and this, that, the other. But if they don't win, they can always just fall back on the sword of, it was a private individual, it was Sheikh Jassim. It wasn't the Qatari state. We deny any involvement in the offer. Well, they're going to have to deny any involvement anyway, even if they are successful, because of the conflict that it would create with PSG. So, effectively, what you have now is that if Ratcliffe puts an offer in that's competitive, and because the Qataris now know everything that I've just said to you, they know what we know effectively now, that he can get round the legal blockade of the minority investors. The Qataris have sat there with no pressure on them, no time scale, and thinking that, well, we're the only bidders right now. Ratcliffe's tied up in a spaghetti jumble. We can just sit here on whatever money we want and we can wait. Whereas now, the pressure's back on because suddenly, Ratcliffe's back in the race now. So, effectively, if I'm being honest with you, if it come down to it, there's two ways that the Qataris are going to take this. They'll either make one final push, which has never been denied, I must admit. It's never been confirmed, it's never been denied that they wouldn't make a final push. That door has always been left open. But the one thing that I've always heard from the Qatari side of it is that they will fight to get Manchester United Football Club until they hear the words no. When they hear the words no, that's when they draw the line at it. And they've never heard the word no to any of their offers. So the way that they look at that is, well, our offers are still credible. Our offers are still competitive. So there's no reason to bid again. But if they just hear that the Glazers from the negotiating with SIR JIM or anything, it might spark something to think, shit, we're at the poker table, all in. Let's go all in now. And then if we don't win it, we're not going to have this massive backlash to say, well, you didn't even try. Why didn't you just pay, as people say, why don't you just pay the $6 billion? Why don't you just do everything that it takes to get United? But then if they do that, and this Glazer family still don't go for it, well, then we know all along that it was just that the Glazer family wanted to stay because you had somebody there that offered you everything that you wanted, but you still said no. So effectively, it's a win-lose situation. They'll either get the football club and they'll be praised, but they'll also be criticised by the media because it'll be a state-backed bid, or you'll get a situation where they don't get the football club. They can just claim all deniability of the whole thing and just say it was Sheikh Jassim. You know, it was a rogue royal Qatari. He wanted to buy Manchester United because he was a fan. His father was behind him, and so forth. And it was a family thing. That's the way that the Qataris would portray it down and play it down. But they haven't heard the word no. Neither has Ratcliffe. So until you hear the words no, it's not you, or your bid's been unsuccessful. Until you hear the word no, you're not going to stop. And that's the way that I think a lot of people really in life, unless you hear the words no, when you're negotiating for something, let's say you negotiate for a new car, or I don't know, you like the look of a T-shirt, but you don't want to pay that price. You're going to negotiate that price down to what you think is reasonable. And unless that person tells you no at that price, or tells you no, I'm not selling it anymore, then you're still within a chance to get it. So effectively, nothing changes. But do I think that, if I'm being honest with you, and if I had to really put my own spin on it as a last sort of message, it's so unheard of that you have a wealthy person or a wealthy state come in to buy a football club and they don't get it. It would be almost, it would be embarrassing. It would be almost unheard of that a nation state have been done over by a petrochemical firm. And, and as many people have quoted and phrased him, a broke billionaire, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Like, it would be absolutely embarrassing. You would never hear, you wouldn't hear the last of it as a major Qatari international. And if you ever saw Sheikh Jassim in Mayfair in London with his father at one of his hotels or anything, you would never hear the end of it, that you had the nation state's money behind you and you lost to a broke billionaire. You'd never hear the end of it. And as much as people want to sling the sort of human rights arguments towards it, it's not a nice sort of thing to portray, but you will get a couple of idiots online that will make, you know, gestures towards these sort of people or the PR firms of these people. And you'll have racial remarks that will be like, you'll have certain fans that will take it far, far over the line and beyond. But no, at the end of the day, I think it's very unheard of that you would have a sheikh from anywhere. Listen, even if you had a sheikh from Timbuktu, it's very rare that you're not going to have somebody like that who has the money to buy something. First of all, to even bid for it, but then if they don't end up buying it when they've bidded, it would be so embarrassing, not only for them personally, but like I say, the sort of influential people that's behind him. Like, I don't know how they'd live with themselves. I really don't. That they've lost to a businessman. That they're a nation state. They're 1,000 people, and they've lost to one person and a petrol company. It would be absolutely embarrassing and scandalous for them to do.
Well, I mean, is, you know, from a British point of view, why hasn't any of the INEOS been mentioned the same way as Qatar, like all the leaks, chemicals? I mean, that is true. That is true. And at the end of the day,
all to come, Jarvis.
Yeah,
if they did get the football club.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like all that stuff like that. I think in the typical British fashion, this is a foreigner. Or foreign company, we don't want to influence something, so that's why the media attention is on Qatar right now, and obviously Sir Jim is seen as the antithesis to that being British, localized, etc. But the reality is,
I'll give you an additional point to what Jarvis has said. Why doesn't he live in the UK? Why doesn't he live in the UK? Just out of curiosity, G, why do you think he doesn't live in the UK?
Well, to avoid, probably presuming to avoid tax. I imagine.
There you go. And the guy's actually been fined. If people want to go and research anyway, he's been fined and he's been in court, SIR JIM RATCLIFFE, before for tax evasions. I think it was in 2011 or 2012. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he was done for tax evasion in the UK. And then what did he do after these, you know, appearances, and he's in the local papers and everything? He moves abroad and he goes to where? Monaco, tax-free, multi-millionaire paradise, billionaire paradise. You don't ever hear from him.
There you go, man. Like I said, there's no such thing as a moral billionaire. I think the sooner people realize that, the better, rather than injecting morality into these situations. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. As Stephanie said, a great content on this time. Thank you, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, we'll be a bit longer, but I have to head to bed. Got exam stuff coming on. It is what it is. But tune in. We'll hopefully do a live match reaction to the Crystal Palace game. Hopefully we'll win. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a nice day, everyone, and cheers. Peace.